Hello and welcome to this episode of Superhero Ethics. Friends, this will be the last of our hiatus episodes. We've got a bunch of new content coming for you now that the strike is over. We're going to be kicking off with an episode about The Boys and a great new book that's been written about that TV show. We have content coming about what is a Christmas movie and the whole genre of Christmas movies that we know and love or not love. We've got stuff coming on Spider-Man, on all sorts of new content that's been coming out. And today, in a weird way, we're going to be kicking off our Christmas movie content by giving you a blast from the past, one of our favorite old episodes, our coverage of that well-known Christmas movie, Batman Returns. Do you think it's a Christmas movie? Do you not think it's a Christmas movie? Well, let us know, because we'll be going into that further in our Christmas movie episode. But for now, enjoy this episode. Thank you again so much for all your support during the strike, and we will be back with all new content starting next week. Hello and welcome to this episode of Superhero Ethics. Today we're talking about Batman Returns, the second of the Michael Keaton, Tim Burton team-up movies. We're getting into that with myself, Paul Hoppy, and Ashley Coffin, talking about the ethical issues around Batman, the look, the feel, the tone, looking at how this movie fits into our understanding of who Batman is as we get ready for the Batman movie coming out in March, and asking, is this our Batman? All that and more after a commercial break we have no control over. But maybe Max Shrek does. Welcome back. I'm Matthew, your host. I'm joined, as I said, by Ashley Coffin and Paul Hoppy. Ashley, you weren't able to join us last time, so glad you're here. This is a movie you're pretty fond of, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite movies for just so many reasons.
Nice. Well, really good to have you with us. Paul, good to have you back discussing Batman again.
Yeah, it's nice to be back. I'm also extra glad Ashley's here because I always enjoy podcasting with Ashley, but also I rewatched the movie and didn't love it, so it'll be nice to have, a more positive voice. There's a lot I like about it, and it's not like I'm just going to be trashing it or anything. But there's some things. Yeah,
I did not love it the first time I saw it as a kid. I think it came out 92, something like that. Rewatching it again now, I don't think it is not to me on the same level as the first one or a lot of the other. I think it's definitely in not my top tier of Batman movies, but I definitely think there's a lot more that I got out of the movie than I got out of it when I was a kid. So yeah, I think it's really interesting kind of hearing both of your perspectives on this. And let's just start with kind of a plot summary. Paul, having given you no preparation at all, do you want to just, for those who haven't seen this movie before or haven't remembered it, give kind of a quick 30-second, 1-minute plot summary?
Yeah, cool. It's an origin story for Penguin and Catwoman, and there's a businessman who's like Max Lord but isn't Max Lord. He's Max Shrek, or he's Shrek, which is a weird name for him to have. And I guess Batman's also in the movie.
Yeah, I think that's pretty well put. Yeah, it's we get the Catwoman origin story. She's the secretary for Max Shrek. He's evilbusinessperson.org. He wants to take over the city because the mayor's getting in the way of his dreams for a power plant. And meanwhile, this penguin guy has been down in the sewers doing penguin things. Is he a man-eater? Is he not? And so Max kind of pulls Penguin out into the light and makes him a hero and then orchestrates for Penguin to run for mayor. And all this time, Selena Kyle, Max's secretary, is trying to...
Executive assistant,
thank you. She gets thrown out a window and a bunch of cats lick her, and so she becomes Catwoman.
I think it's the chewing on the finger that turns her into Catwoman.
Which is still a very difficult scene for me to watch, and I love horror. It grosses me out.
Really?
Mm-hmm. The magic realism of this movie we'll definitely be discussing. But at the end, Penguin reveals that he's Penguin. Catwoman winds up being a pseudo-ally, pseudo-not, as we'll discuss. She kills Max Shrek. We think she might have died, but we see her at the very last frame of the movie. And Batman, fights crime. But,
Batman gets framed a lot.
Yeah, Batman gets framed a lot.
Exactly. Well, and so let's kind of go from there into kind of general impressions of the movie. Because to me, I think the most interesting thing about it, and you'd think this is a bad thing, but I actually kind of really like it, is that, as you said, Paul, Batman is a very small part of this movie. And even more so, Batman doesn't have a character arc in this movie. Like, this feels to me a lot like an episode. I think we've often talked before about how we don't like the idea that in a movie you have to kind of question the premise every single time. Mm-hmm. This feels like an episode. You know,
yeah.
Batman is Batman at the beginning, he's Batman at the end. It's just it's the like Catwoman and Penguin episode of Tim Burton Batman.
I think that's well put.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to like, it's funny because you're right, because I have to sit here and think about like what Batman was doing. But it's because like I wonder, I would love to know more about how this film was made, because I would wonder if that was the initial storyline, or if these two actors just like had roles written for them that were just so perfect. Because like Danny DeVito's been in a lot of great movies, but for me, this is one of like his best roles. And it's very like, I don't know, he's intense, he's funny. And Catwoman, like that year, I was Catwoman for Halloween. Like she started my love of like the tortured villain. Like you're a villain, but you're not a villain. But, you know, more Punisher style kind of vigilante villain that I love and, you know, as an adult aspire to be. But I don't know. There was a lot. The Batman of it all was just like, he was a ploy.
Yeah, like I'd be kind of curious what the salaries were. And I mean, Michael Keaton is the star.
10 million.
He's the top billing. Is that real?
Yeah. Michael Keaton made 10 million. Michelle Pfeiffer made 3 million.
Oh no.
Which was 2 million more than the originally intended actress for Catwoman.
Right. How much did Danny DeVito make?
I don't know that. I think Annette Bening was originally going to be Catwoman.
Oh, Michelle, I can see it, but Michelle was a much better choice.
Yeah. She was fantastic, yeah.
But yeah, clearly, to me, it's, I mean, in terms of like amount paid per line of dialogue or moment on screen, Michael Keaton is making one hell of a good deal.
Yeah, it's not quite Mark Hamill in The Force Awakens, but
true.
Top billing plus millions for 0 lines of dialogue. But
so I guess that's kind of my overall impression is like I love that it's not an origin story it's not a Batman movie. I mean, it's a Batman movie, but like it doesn't have to have a plot hook. I love that for Batman. I like the two characters. Some of it just doesn't grab me, but overall, like I like the kind of social commentary aspects. Actually, for you, what makes this movie so good?
There's some parts of this movie that are kind of unforgettable for me, like doing theater and as an actor, and see like the freak out, Selena Kyle's freak out, like it just looked like it was the most fun thing in the world to do. It's one of the best freakouts I've ever seen on screen. And like, this is when you're getting introduced to like a very different kind of Catwoman from, you know, like the Adam West stuff. And, you know, we're seeing like, we don't really get the full story of how it happened, which, you know, whatever, you know, but coming back and like getting in her boss's face the kind of way that she did, like, sure, he's like, I'll just push her out a higher window, but still, like, there's just this empowerment in her character that as a young girl really stood out for me. And then it's a Christmas movie, which we watch it on Christmas Eve every year. So there's something about the whole Christmas aspect. I don't know. I really love the journey that it goes on. And I feel like you're like going down this hole with Bruce Wayne. Like there's these two dominating people and you don't know, like, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
It's something like the Joker was one thing, but I feel like he was supposed to be a very young Bruce Wayne, even though that, you know, they picked Michael Keaton, who is amazing, but I don't know. I don't think he was ready for them.
Yeah. I feel like that scene is definitely one of the best scenes in this movie. Where she like literally paints it black. She's just painting everything black. And
that pink apartment. Ugh.
Yeah. Where with the hello there sign that turns into hell here.
Ugh, beautiful.
And one of the things that I think sets her off is, you know, she's got these messages on her machine, right? And one of them is from Gotham Lady Perfume. And
Selena Kyle.
It's so creepy. Like the thing, it's like your boss will be asking you to stay late for a candlelight dinner for 2. Like, sexual harassment much, like that, but that's like what you should want, you know, as an employee, is like to get with the boss or whatever. It's like, I don't know. And then she like busts out and becomes Catwoman, basically.
The best movie scream.
You know, we talked a little bit about this last time, Paul, but I think in this movie even more, there's sort of a time. I feel like there's no clear sense of what time this movie is happening in terms of like what date.
Oh, like what era?
Yeah, because like all the men, especially the journalists, but all of them are wearing hats, you know? And to me, that's like, that hasn't been a thing since the 50s, really, if even before that. Like, and there's so much about it that, kind of like we talked about this with the TV show Gotham sometimes, that is kind of like, you know, it's not quite set in a particular moment in time. And there's a timelessness to Gotham is kind of stuck in the noir era. That I do think that this movie kind of conveyed, and to me, like that advertisement is straight out of Mad Men. You know, it's very much a like 1950s thing.
Yeah. Which I love. I'm so like biased against this movie because it has so many things that I love.
Yeah. Well, and so I want to get into specific details, but yeah, Paul, for you, kind of generally, what didn't you love about this movie?
I mean, I feel like the plot's a mess. Like the plot and pacing are just a mess, and I feel like it doesn't get us into... I feel like I don't care about what's happening a lot of the time. Sometimes there's cool stuff that's happening and I'm enjoying the scene, but like within the context of the movie, I'm like, I don't really know what Penguin wants. Like, we spend some time with him and Shrek, and like, you know, having a Batman movie where he's like not that much of the movie, like knowing that, like, I could see like watching it again clearly with that in mind might be kind of make it more enjoyable. I can kind of see how if you love the movie, like rewatching it is actually like kind of in some ways better than watching it for the first time. I actually remember the experience of being in the theater and like for the first half hour just being like, what is going on? Like, where's Batman? You know? And I think that can be cool. I think for like the second movie in potentially a series, you know, it's ambitious. I've seen this described as like the first blockbuster art house film or something, you know?
I think it's so real.
It really does feel like, I think they went through at least 6 scripts. There was originally it was going to be about Penguin and Catwoman hunting for like hidden treasure, and which seems very in character with them, like them wanting material wealth, right? That's kind of Catwoman's a cat burglar. Penguin's usually this sort of business kind of gangstery kind of guy, right? And here Catwoman wants vengeance. That's it, right? Like she's gotten liberation and now she wants vengeance, basically. And Penguin wants vengeance. And, you know, and I mean, Penguin, like in the beginning, I was like, oh, I feel sorry for like this little kid. Like, whatever, is this little kid? And like, what, his parents think he's ugly. So, oh, he ate the cat. Like,
I knew that was not going to be happening.
Is that when you would throw him over the frozen bridge?
That's when I would throw him out a higher window. Yeah. No. But like, yeah, I there's like a lot about kind of what it does that I like, but I just feel like the way it gets there, it feels to me like a movie that went through tons of rewrites and doesn't have this like tight narrative, but has a lot of great moments.
I think that's a good way of putting it, because I don't want to get into Penguin specifically, but even just going on the Batman part, I think I definitely had that first reaction as well. I was paying attention. The first time we see Bruce Wayne on screen early on when they light up the bat signal, and he's just sitting in the dark waiting for it. Yeah. Which is one of the most Bruce Wayne moments I've ever seen in my life. It's fantastic. Yeah. But his first line of spoken dialogue is, I think, at 36 minutes into the movie. Right. Like, and yeah, I kind of think maybe part of it is that there's not much for him dialogue-wise. There's not much for him character development-wise. Excuse me. There's not much for him character development-wise, although the romance between him and Selena Kyle is fantastic, and I'll say more about that in a moment. But also, he doesn't get to have many cool toys. Like, I did kind of wonder if maybe part of the problem was he has the boat, but like in the first movie... Well, and
then the Batmobile breaks apart and becomes that torpedo that can go down through...
Okay,
make your point and then let us tear it apart.
Okay, sure.
The penguins.
I feel like in the first movie, we got so much of like, look at every cool thing Batman can do between like the plane and the car and the different gadgets, that there wasn't anything in this movie where I was like, oh my God, Batman can do that too. And yeah, the Batmobile can do some new kind of cool things. But I think that having Batman be to me, I think like the movie did two things. One of which is have Batman not need to be the central character in terms of character growth. The other is just significantly reduce his screen time. And maybe you can maybe you don't have to do both of those things. You know, you could have done the first one and the second one, at least give him some, like, I don't think there's a fight scene in this movie that I remember as being at all interesting.
Yeah.
Except maybe
Catwoman and Batman.
Yeah, that's about it.
But that's like really almost like the only scene I can think of that's like real like hand-to-hand fighting. And I feel the opposite in terms of the toys. I hear what you're saying, and like maybe the toys don't feel as cool as they did in the first movie, but I feel like they were leaning into them so heavily. Like he's just constantly, he doesn't attack the guy, he like hits the thing behind him and then pulls the wall onto him. Okay, you know, he's got this batarang that he programs to hit a bunch of people. Like, what's that? Like the car breaking apart. Like, I don't know. I remember when at that moment in the theater, like it kind of lost me. It feels like this very sequelitis. Like, what do we think people want to see? Okay, let's go more with the toys. And I felt fight scenes felt boring because maybe it's because they came with more sort of gadgets, but they weren't really interesting, clever ideas. But also to me, it's just like, you know, I want to see him sidekick someone. You know, I want that hand-to-hand fighting.
He was still in the stage where they couldn't move. And that goes to the next, like, 2 Batman movies. They put that cowl on them and they can't move their heads. So you're very limited with what you can do with an actor.
Yeah, but in the first movie, I feel like they did a better job with it anyway. Like,
he got his legs up pretty high. There were some pretty awesome kicks in the first movie.
Yeah, there's not a lot.
Well, in this one, he's not going to kick
Catwoman
in the face.
I mean, that's funny when she's like, how could you? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. And he's like, dude. Like,
I'm a woman and shouldn't be taken for granted.
She's so good at playing off of like dumb male chauvinism.
How could you? I'm a woman. That's the line.
I just feel like the fight scenes don't feel compelling. You know, the only fight scene that I felt at all invested in was the one between Batwoman and Catman. Yeah, great. Okay, cool. You know, you heard what I meant.
I think we kind of came to the same place, and that was kind of my point, is that it felt like there wasn't enough, like, if he's not going to be interesting doing speaking things, at least make the other stuff he's doing interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that totally.
And to me, I think one part of it is, you know, actually the last episode, we talked about how in the last third of the movie, Batman kind of becomes the Punisher in ways we didn't really love, in terms of like using guns and missiles and having really bad aim when it comes to shooting the Joker, but you know,
right.
But that, you don't think that was on purpose because he's Batman?
Well, no, because he clearly kills a bunch of other people.
Oh.
And in this movie, when there was some of the like pulling out pavement to hit people and things like that, I was kind of like, oh, okay, are you showing us that Batman is going to ingenious lengths to incapacitate people without killing them? Okay, cool. Maybe. Oh, nope. He just straight up killed that guy.
Like he threw the guy with the bomb down the hole and then he blew up. Like
he's just sleeping. He's just sleeping.
That was the moment where I was like, okay. So, all right. So putting aside Batman, let's talk about the 3 villains, because I think one of the things I liked most about this movie is the interplay between those 3 and each of their 3 characters being so interesting. And I want to kind of talk about like each of them individually, but just starting with, I think one of the questions the movie really asks in such a great way is, with Catwoman kind of being sort of an anti-hero, but especially with Penguin and Shrek, the question is like, who's the real monster? You know, Penguin looks like a monster and does monstrous things. He eats cats, among other things, or ate one cat. Shrek looks like a respectable businessman, but over the course of the movie, like, until maybe Tim Burton is just really bad at the last act of movies. Because also, like, Penguin feels like such an interesting character to me, who's not the monster that Max is, until he just decides, okay, well, Catwoman didn't sleep with me, so now I hate her, which was an awful moment. And also, the city doesn't like me, so now I'm going to blow it all up or steal all their kids. Like,
Paul?
I feel like he kind of got you Like, I feel like the Penguin always was a monster, but it's like he wasn't a monster because of how he looked. That was like, we were supposed to overcome that prejudice and then realize like, oh, but he's a monster because he is a monster. Maybe it's because he was, not treated well as a child, blah, blah, blah. But like, he is actually what he wants is like revenge on a bunch of kids who weren't the people who wronged him, right? The people who wronged him are dead. And like, so he just, I feel like he's not this like very complex character. He's trying to pretend to be misunderstood, but he's actually not.
Well, it's the whole Batman scene with the disc when he actually records what he thinks about the city. And on the other side, it's kind of like, look at Wilson Fisk. I think Wilson Fisk really believed that what he was doing for some part was the best for the city. But the Penguin always had these other plans. He had the plans to collect the children before he was mayor because that's what they were working on up in his attic, whatever, like secret, like lair where they like inducted him into being mayor. So he always kind of had this backup plan or was always going to do that anyway. But if it had all worked out perfectly for him, that would have stopped it. But that was never going to happen because that's just not the way the world works.
I guess to me, like the three of us were the ones who discussed The Witcher. I kind of see Max Shrek as like Stregobor and Penguin as like one of the monsters they're fighting in terms of like, because the story that
Max killed his friend. I mean, like he's a murderer.
Yeah, Max
even before
is just a
Selena
horrible,
Kyle.
horrible person.
Yeah, no, that's my point.
Stregobor is the maximum bad in The Witcher.
Evil,
right?
My point, because he's sort of like, I am malevolently plotting evil.
Right.
Whereas with Penguin, like the kitten, like, it's awful, but like, it's like he's a feral beast.
Right.
And where the development that I thought I saw from him was, he was definitely that kind of very feral creature, completely unsocialized, like not a good person by any means. And the fact that Max and then the whole city kind of wants to embrace him is meant to be kind of ridiculous because he's clearly not a heroic figure.
We saved the mayor's baby.
Right, exactly.
But it's when he realizes that Max was playing him and the whole thing falls apart on him, that's kind of his last turn into being, even more like, now I'm going to want to take out all the kids in the city.
But he already had all the plans, like all the names.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
I think, and that's sort of like where actually the part of, I like a lot about Batman outside of the fight scenes in this movie, where I like that he's very much a detective. I like that he sees Penguin and he sees through his bullshit, basically. And he does detective work and he figures it out. And, he records this, hijacking of the Batmobile on a disc and then somehow scratches the CD to make it repeat. Like, that's not how that technology works. But that felt to me like they were like, ooh, it's the 90s. Let's do so. I was like, no.
But I love that everyth's the bat everything. Like, even the CD player was like the bat symbol.
The bat CD player. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Marketing.
But like, he is like trying to outsmart, he outsmarts Penguin basically. And like, that I enjoy. The fighting scenes, particularly like where, that woman's on the ledge and then the bats are there and then she like falls off and he's just like, oh, I guess she fell. I'm like, not my Batman. Like,
the ice princess.
Really?
He told her not to move.
Right. He did tell her not to move and then she moved. So
but then she fell and then the cops showed up. Oh, he should have dove off and tried to save her immediately.
That's how Batman does. What's the point of all those gadgets if you're not going to jump off the top of a building, grab someone, shoot some grappling hook, and then land about 4 feet from the ground, if that.
Right. Yeah. Like, maybe he has a Garfield moment and she doesn't make it, and that's part of how he gets framed. But yeah, him just standing there and being like, oops, like, not my Batman.
The cops show up pretty quick, though.
Yeah, they were already there, right? Because there was a thing going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, the whole point was Penguin was trying to frame Batman to make him look like...
And they the cops shoot him off the top, and that's when he glides down.
Right. Yeah.
And I think you guys are both right. I was maybe overstating it. It's not that I think that Penguin is a good character at all. It's that I think it does set something up where I do think Max is worse. Like, to me, what Shrek won, at least until that last act. And for something for me, and maybe this is who the Penguin always is, but having him change so quickly on Catwoman because she rejects him sexually or sexually pretty clearly, in such like viciously like, oh, you're a tease, you're all
Right.
You love
just
me,
hate it.
Minx. She's like, I wouldn't touch you to scratch you.
Yeah.
She's the best.
Yeah.
You sent out all the signals.
I feel like you wanted the Penguin to like that the Penguin was pretending to be a character that you would have found more interesting. And that the movie wasn't necessarily telling an incoherent story about who this Penguin is, but that who this Penguin is less interesting than the Penguin you want.
That's fair. That's certainly very fair.
And I have seen more interesting penguins. I feel like the Gotham Penguin is, more interesting. Some of the animated penguins have a little bit more nuance a lot of the time.
And I wonder if that also is due to some of the script rewrites. Is that
maybe
there may have been a version of the movie, because I think a lot of this stuff, I think you're supposed to feel fairly sympathetic for Penguin in a lot of ways. I mean, one thing I thought was interesting is there's kind of this whole Moses motif.
Yeah.
Like
that's deliberate.
Yeah, the bassinet floating on the water, and then like the slaying of the firstborn.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just very like, I don't know where this is going.
Right.
But yeah, I kind of wonder maybe like there's some parts of it that I think are clearly written to be like, Max is the real monster, Penguin is the victim who's become a monster, but then probably later rewrites are like, no, but let's just make Penguin evil, So, Aaron, anything else on Mr. Pengy before we move on to our next contestant?
I'm good. I mean, just like
My
in a
babies.
duck, and like, I mean, I feel like the performance is like so over the top, but it works.
It's so good.
But I feel like it takes. I actually had the opposite feeling you had, where it took me most of the movie to kind of buy him as like, okay, this is this guy. And to be like, all right, let's just go with it. Whereas in the beginning, I was kind of like, I don't know. Like, it kind of doesn't work for me in the beginning. And then it kind of, and maybe on a rewatch, like, and I mean, this was a rewatch, but it was a rewatch decades later. Like, I watched both movies in the theater, and then I had both on VHS, right? And, but I watched the first movie a lot, and like, maybe I rewatched the other one once. But like I just didn't this one, right? I just didn't watch this a bunch of times. So this is almost like a new viewing. So
I know that at least once when the fourth movie was about to come out, we had a like marathon of the first three at my house that I think you were at.
Yeah, I didn't watch them all though. I don't think I've ever seen Batman Forever in its entirety, for the record.
Well, we're probably going to change that.
Yeah.
All right. So what about Mr. Max Shrek? What do we think of him?
I mean, it's Christopher Walken. They couldn't have gotten a better person to play that role.
Yeah. But between the three of them, there's not a piece of scenery that does not have teeth marks.
Yeah, it is all been devoured. He feels over the top villainous, but like in a real world way, where he's like, I'm doing this for my son Chip.
Chippers.
It's like, I'm a good guy. It's for Chippers. And like that scene of him like throwing out the presents to the people in the crowd, that felt very 2017 to me.
Yeah, Trump throwing paper towels.
Yeah, and it's
Rico.
like, okay, these aren't paper towels, and those aren't, people who just had a hurricane go through. But they live in Gotham, which I think is kind of like having a hurricane go through every day almost.
I think that's fair.
So many clown attacks.
So many clown attacks.
I mean, if we keep, I feel like, to me, I think over the top is kind of the definition of this movie. It was like Schumacher takes it into camp, which I think I used to hate, but now have a real appreciation for. This, I just feel like it's just this feels much more like a comic book movie than the first one did.
Right.
Even Selena Kyle, as badass as she is, if this was like a serious movie, I would like, no, come on, no human being talks like that.
It's
she's doing her Catwoman voice.
This is like Camp Noir.
And
Yes,
maybe that's like
perfect.
why I love it. Because
Maybe.
there's something about the darkness, the makeup, the music is one of my favorite scores of any movie ever.
Oh, it's amazing.
And the mood that it all sets when you put it together is like, I'm like, I want to live in that Gotham because I think I would thrive. But that's my personality.
Right.
Like in some ways, Ashley, did you see the TV show Gotham?
No.
Okay. This noir camp feels kind of similar. like, I think Gotham would also very much qualify as noir camp. And this movie feels very similar in tone to that, in terms of, like, it's timeless, everything is over the top, everything is... There's a lot of exclamation marks in the script, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, the complaints about the movie from, like, most of the people who made complaints at the time were like, it's too dark, it's too adult, it's too serious and brooding. And it's like, did we see the same movie? Like, it is visually dark. Like, some of the themes are dark, but they're definitely treated in, like, a dark comedy kind of way, I think. And I'd say this one, the first one is definitely the one that I like the most. This one feels the most Tim Burton. Like, I feel like the first one was successful, so he was like, all right, I get to do this kind of how I want.
Yeah, the Arctic, like, park.
Yeah.
You know, the animal, like, everything just looks so, all the penguins.
Yeah.
The napalm penguins.
Yeah.
well, and this gets... I made this reference before, but I want to maybe just kind of bring it up as a topic now. To me, one of the words I think of for this movie is magical realism. You know, in terms of, like, there are things happening that don't make sense by the laws of our natural world, but that are also never, like, you know, in Marvel, we talk about how there's always some sort of, like, line of pseudo-babble science or mysticism and, like, but here, like, you know, how is Penguin born the way he is?
Right.
It's a birth defect. Or, like...
Catwoman.
Catwoman, yeah. Like, she clearly gains powers of some extent. Like, certainly her, you know, she went through, like, she got, like, a Neo-level Matrix download of martial arts.
And you get 9 lives.
Yeah. She died and then undied.
She dies
repeatedly.
many times. Yeah,
many times. I think she has one life left at the end of it.
That's why she,
I kept waiting for it to show that she had a bulletproof vest and was kidding, but no, she meant it about the many lives.
She's just like, I got 9 lives. How do I know this?
Yeah.
Batman killed me. You killed me. 3 left.
I just brought that up now because to me that's also very much a Tim Burton thing of, like, there's spookiness, there's weirdness, you don't understand it, don't ask questions. And I feel like
no
this movie did that
necessary or
a lot more. And I don't mind it, but it's definitely different, very different.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Does the fact that we jumped off the topic so quickly say something about Max Schreck as, like, Christopher Walken's a great actor and he chews some scenery, but, like, it's basically just Lex Luthor.
I mean,
without a lot of
even
interesting
less
parts.
than that. Max Schreck is just a facilitator for moving the plot along. Like, we need the guy, you know, he killed Selena Kyle and he just happens to be the guy who helps get Penguin in power and runs the second that things go sideways, and that's where everything starts to go to shit. So he's really just kind of like the facilitator of all the bad things that are happening in the movie. All 3. The Bruce Wayne thing with the power plant, he killed Selena Kyle, and going with and then turning against the Penguin. We need, you know, if Batman's not going to do it, we need somebody to deal with these villains.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, to me, he's like the script doctor. He's like, how are we going to make all these things work? It's like, Max Schreck will fix it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think he's, you know, it's like a very simple character archetype, I think executed flawlessly by Walken, you know, and I mean, I think he would make a great Lex Luthor too, you know?
Yeah, agreed.
At first I had to look up, I was like, is this Stag? Like, because he reminded me a lot, like with the hair and stuff of that Stag from... usually from Wonder Woman, I think, who also shows up in the Justice League animated series. But he's not. They just made up a new character. And I think it would have been a very unmemorable, kind of irrelevant feeling character if it wasn't Christopher Walken giving that 100%. You know, it's like nothing he does is that interesting, but the way he does it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, he's generic evil capitalist in a way we've
Exactly.
seen in 100 different movies, but you're right. Yeah. And I think that's very
He's
fitting. And
genuinely scary in that scene with Selena Kyle before he pushes her out the window. Like when he's in her for it's very tense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, especially because one of the things that I loved about that scene is, and this kind of gets more into like the Gotham of it all that we'll get to later. I don't think there's a better way the filmmakers could have shown us this is a person who has zero thought that he will ever be held accountable for anything.
Yeah.
Because, like, if I'm a cop and I find the dead body and then I look up and I see a broken window and I figure out that this woman used to work for the guy with the broken window, I think I know where to start my investigation.
She flat out says it. She's like, it's not like you can just kill me. And he's like, actually, it's a lot like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's why I love that shot so much.
Cinematography wise in that shot. The way that they have her shadows bouncing off of like her face, the way like they had like a ring light, and it makes like these cat kind of shadows over her eyes. Like I love stuff like that, which is all like the cinematography in this movie is beautiful.
It really is. It definitely is.
Word.
Let's talk about Ashley. You've been kind of chomping at the bit to get more into this. Let's talk about Selena Kyle, Catwoman. What do we love? What do you think of this portrayal of the character?
I like it's what I like. I'm going to claim a new term, and it's called evil feminism. And I really love what she's doing with it. Because like, you know, she's kind of tough in the beginning. She's standing up to them. You know, she steals that shocker. What do you call them?
Taser?
A taser. Yeah. She steals that taser and like kind of tases the guy. So you get right away, like she's tough, but like you're not superhero or villain tough. And then she goes through this traumatic thing and decides like, I'm going to come back and just wreak havoc on the people that did this to me. And I'm going to get there any way I can. But then she starts to kind of fall in love with Batman and it gets in her head. And it's just such a I don't know. Michelle Pfeiffer just did such a good job with this role.
Yeah. I think especially because she sells so well she sells Selena Kyle both before and after the transformation.
Yes.
You know, I've seen other versions like this where like you look at the character before the thing happens and you're just like, I don't believe you as a nebbishy person who you look like a gorgeous person who hasn't brushed their hair.
Right.
Like, and I think, I mean, part of it's the makeup and the costumes for sure, but just she portrayed nebbishy and shy and like wallflower that gets walked over by everyone so well in a way that I felt made the transformation to Catwoman, as ridiculous and ununderstandable as it is, completely like it worked, you know?
That's why I love the scene where like when we first see her and she's in this board meeting and like that's my job during the day. Like I'm the one going in giving coffee to all of the people at work. Like that is daily when we have meetings. That is my job. To in the middle be like, well, I have an idea. There's just something about that scene I love so much. Because like I sometimes think like at my work, like I'm like, how do I know the right thing to do? And you are all sitting here like payroll, this and that. Like I know the right thing to do, but none of you do. But you're not going to listen to me. So even the fact that like this meek character did that show, like I don't know. There's something about all the little things she does in this movie that as a young girl kind of resonated with me and sticks with me as throughout my adulthood.
Yeah, I mean, you probably see the mistakes they make over and over and over, and they can't see them because they're making them. And like, I think that's definitely a thing a lot of the time, you know. But I feel like that scene does sell her as kind of someone who's going to evolve into Catwoman. I do feel, though, kind of in this movie, like there is no Selena Kyle, only Catwoman. Like, like once she becomes like it's very different from most of the other Catwomans that I am familiar with and enjoy, where Selena Kyle is a person who dresses up as Catwoman and like Catwoman is her alter ego, but like there isn't this like disconnect between those, right? It's not like this felt very much like you know, Patty Jenkins and I think Jeff Johns, right, wrote the script to Wonder Woman 84. And it feels like they just saw this and then they're like, oh, let's capture that and turn her into, you know, what's her name?
Tigress.
Yeah. But here it's, you know, done better and it's done 30 almost years earlier, which feels like some of the things that you do, like, I feel I don't know. Like that board meeting, I feel like that plays better than it does now, you know, even if it's like unfortunately still a relatable moment, you know, but just like that also in this Gotham that feels kind of like it's 50s ish, you know. It feels like, well, you know.
That's my other favorite scene with her is the masquerade ball. When they're dancing and then she's just in the middle of the dance floor, just pulls out the gun like, I'm gonna kill him, and he's like, what are you doing? And she's just got that, she's like, I don't know. I'm just gonna do it. And then they like have the reveal, the mistletoe thing, and they're like, or do we start fighting now? And I absolutely love that scene, and I feel like that's kind of the fight between Catwoman and Selena Kyle in that scene.
Okay.
Yeah. The scene where they figure out who each other, like, I think that is one of my favorite, like, actually, this is funny, because my two favorite moments where two people realize who each other's alternate identity is, both involve Michael Keaton. Because it's this moment, and then it's him and Tom Holland in the car,
Homecoming,
where they figure out that they're Spider-Man and Vulture. It's like, it's totally different, but I remember I was like, he's done this twice. This is so good. I think one of the things with Catwoman that I was noticing, and Paul, I'm wondering if this is kind of what you're talking about how different it is. She's always flirting with Batman, and there's sometimes stories where they get together. But she's a member of the Rogues Gallery.
Right.
She does villainous things, and she's not often like Eartha Kitt was sexy as hell and wonderful, but she wasn't like anti-hero levels of like righteous revenge that she's getting. She just wanted to steal stuff and hurt people along the way. And I think here, and also to some extent with in Batman Forever, although there at least she starts out as a burglar, it's something like when you have her on screen, she's
You mean The Dark Knight?
Rises.
What did I say?
You said Batman Forever.
The Dark Knight Forever.
No. Oh God, no. Yeah. Woof. In the Dark Knight Rises as well, they move her from being a villain to an anti-hero. You know, where it's like she wants to do things that Batman wants to stop, but she also, like, we as the audience are very sympathetic towards her. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that portrayal. I think it's kind of interesting that they shy away from the, like, no, I mean, she maybe not as bad as Joker. She doesn't want to kill people, but, like, she's just robbing people to make herself rich. Like, she's not, on this great feminist crusade the way that this character is. So
she pretends
I love that
to
she
be
is.
like a Robin Hood type thing. Like, she steals for herself, but then she also, like, helps the others. Or
I think
some
in
versions.
A lot of Catwoman portrayals, she is a little bit of a Robin Hood character. Like, she's often, like, she wants the jewels for herself, but also, like, she's usually got, like, some ward or something. She's got a bunch of cats she's feeding. Like, I think she is very much an anti-hero. Or maybe she's an anti-villain. I'm not sure. But, like, she's...
It's kind of like the scene where she saves the chick from getting robbed or whatever was happening there. And then she grabs her face. And I love this scene because she's like, so easy to just scream for someone to come save you. Like, toughen up, save yourself. And that, like, I can get that, like, lack of empathy for people who seem weaker. But, I feel like I'm working through my own stuff here right now. But, like, I totally get that scene. Like, she felt like a victim her whole life. So now while she's this new life, when she sees that other person, she saves her. But she's also like, some Batman's not always going to come save you.
Yeah.
Right.
Get it.
Which felt very pointed for a person who Batman came and saved. Like, that was a little bit of projection in that moment.
Yeah.
But but I think it was, like, today, I think if I watched that, I'd be like, ooh, victim blaming much?
Big time.
There was a little sort of unsavoriness to that. But at the same time, like...
Yeah. But at the time this is made, and even more like in the 50s idea, I totally get that idea of, like, look, I can protect myself. You don't have to just be a waif in the corner.
I have a fun fact. That scene where she takes the mannequins' heads off with the whip. She did that in one take, and that was actually Michelle Pfeiffer.
Wow.
And it's on YouTube. The whole crew and everybody's just clapping. Like, yeah, first take. Actually her.
I mean, she
trained hard for the role.
I mean, getting in that outfit.
And it works.
Her whip instructor, I think, she, like, cut her chin or something.
She's very good.
Yeah. Well, and just back to the whole, like, where she's a victim. How much of Batman 66 have you seen, Paul?
I mean, I watched most of the episodes when I was a kid, like, on TV.
Okay.
I haven't deliberately, I haven't rewatched it in decades, I want to say.
I'm wondering, and this is something I might bring on Jessica Plummer for a later episode to get into, because she has a real knowledge of, like, the history of comic books, and she loves the Catwoman character. I do wonder how much of that kind of, like, more, like, she's sympathetic goals starts with this movie or starts around this time, or maybe, like, because like Eartha Kitt, I think, was very much just villain. But you're right. Like, I think in the Batman the Animated Series, she's often much more sympathetic. Have you guys seen the TV show Harley Quinn?
Yeah.
In that one, she's much more back to just being like, I just want to steal stuff. Like, I'm not trying to be on some crusade. And I remember thinking, like, this is such an interesting not new take on the character, but like a take I haven't seen in the character for a long time.
Right. Yeah, I mean, she's definitely a character who can play different roles in different stories. And here, you know, she feels a little more huntress to me here, where I feel like she's not a villain, but she's an antagonist, and she's doing something that, like, maybe we're not supposed to approve of, but it's like, I don't know if you want to kill someone who killed you already, and they're a billionaire who's screwing over the city. Like,
I love that she killed him herself, and I love the way that she did it. But she didn't know about the Ice Princess stuff. She was like, you said you weren't going to kill her.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
You know, so she was not privy to that information that was going to happen. They were just supposed to kill Batman, which she was okay with.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Right. Well, yeah.
I love a complicated character.
Oh, no, it really is. I mean, there's so much depth to her. And it's one of my favorite Batman stories is Mask of the Phantasm, which in some ways is a very similar dynamic in that he has a romantic interest in someone who is like Batman, but then like clearly steps over that line from justice to vengeance, you know? And I think there's a little bit of that same thing here with him being like, yeah, Max Schreck is kind of terrible. We should take him down, but just like assassinating him, maybe not so much. Even though he does kill people. I mean, that it gets... There's an incoherence, I think, Paul, was the word you used, that I think is pretty appropriate here.
There is one Max Schreck quote, actually, that I just wanted to throw in, which was, one can never have too much power. And I felt like that sort of summed up not just this character, but like, you know, all the characters and real life humans who this character represents. Like, it's like, I mean, well, when it comes at the expense of power for others, you can.
Yeah.
I think, you know.
One other just kind of cool thing about Selena Kyle I wanted to mention. I think Ashley, you made a kind of passing references, but I wanted to like really let me say it again. One other just kind of cool thing about Selena Kyle, Catwoman, that Ashley you brought up. The whole movie feels like almost black and white, you know, especially like the scenes in the underground, like the way it's lit, it looks black and white. And so in that, like, Gotham is almost monochromatic. The aggressive bubblegum pink of everything in Selena Kyle's apartment is just so refreshing. And so
everything's black and white, but she has that blue eyeshadow and the red lipstick. And it is just extreme against her alabaster skin in black. And I remember, like, that's like where my passion for blue eyeshadow came. Like, I just was like, that's
the look,
and it didn't look great on me. Look like her at the end of the movie when she pulls it up, because he is Batman, you idiot. And she's just got like the Clockwork Orange going on. I'm like, yes, that's how I look like at the end of every party night.
That was such a good scene. Yeah. Backing up to Penguin also for 1 second. The Penguin's henchmen are all clowns, or at least a lot of them are.
Right.
And I wasn't sure, was that like, I don't remember Penguin having a kind of like
a circus
pseudo Joker circus feel. Like, am I just forgetting that? Or was that supposed to be like, well, the Joker was successful, so maybe I'm going to do the same shtick? Or just the filmmakers were like, we just need more killer clowns because people are afraid of them and Joker?
Yeah.
Why was Penguin?
He said rejects. Like, he collects, you know, people who were like rejected.
Right.
I mean, after Joker dies, like, there's a bunch of out of work clown terrorists, and, you know,
or maybe he made them dress up like that. I'm not sure, but my favorite of them is the blonde with the little dog. She was the best. She didn't do anything. She was just there.
Oh, was she the narrator? The penguins are 1 minute away from
penguins are 1 minute away.
Yeah. That was, like, I thought a nice way to put exposition in, you know, the end. Like, usually it feels so awkward and forced. Here it was awkward, like, deliberately. Like, it was like, this is just, it fit with the surreal sort of, you know,
my
everything
babies
going on. That, you know.
The mind-controlled penguins by a little thing on their heads that's never explained in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, exactly.
Just follow the
I
beep.
think penguin henchmen are typically, like, are kind of inconsistent. Like,
yeah,
you know,
they all have henchmen, I feel like.
Yeah, everybody's got henchmen, right? Penguin definitely has henchmen, but sometimes they're more like in business suits and sometimes they're more in clown outfits. And like, what's the difference?
Doesn't matter.
It's just an aesthetic choice.
I really liked all of his different umbrellas, all the weird things. You have the hypnotized one, you got the squeaky duck one, you got the machine gun one, my personal favorite. You got the one that fly away, my pretty.
You've got the mobile one.
Go to kitty heaven.
Yeah. And at the end, he chooses the wrong one.
He's like, I got the cute one.
I love that scene so much. And then the penguins come out and they're like, they push him in. I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
There's
it's
pallbearers.
Love it. Yeah, I just love it so much. I just need a cool drink of ice water.
So good. I also just have to say, again, with a little exposition, Penguin is 33 years old in this movie.
Allegedly.
And that's
allegedly.
I mean, granted, he's born with flippers, so maybe I shouldn't question his aging process.
Sure.
But like, Danny DeVito was 45 at the time the movie was made, and he does not look like he's in his 30s.
That makeup, like the makeup, the way they did it, like everything is just really, it's very well done.
It really is.
For the time and everything. Like, I don't know. It was great. It reminds me of the Tim Burton, like when Gina Davis and what's his face in Beetlejuice, when they pull their monster face, like his whole nose just looks like that monster face from Beetlejuice.
That's fair. So the last thing I wanted to really bring up was Gotham itself. We've talked about how, Paul, you said like it's like a hurricane hits every day and it's so black and white.
I want to live there.
The thing that I think I missed about it the first time and when I was younger, and now this time I really got, was I feel like there's kind of, the first movie is kind of a comment on celebrity culture in terms of makeup and like belief of who's beautiful and stuff. Here, I feel like with the whole Penguin story, there's really kind of a comment being made about like how if the people who are thought to be important say this person's good and wonderful and trustworthy, that the people in the media and the press will just eat it up,
Yeah.
Like the whole scene of like him becoming this hero figure when he's so clearly not. Or even just like, everyone's so excited to help run his political campaign and he bites someone's nose off and they're still just like, cool, let's do it. Like,
it doesn't sound like anything that happens nowadays.
Right? Yeah, I mean, 10 years ago, I would have said this is ridiculous satire. Today, I'm like, oh, yeah, no, they kind of had a point. We will.
Look at how fast everyone turned on Batman. Like, what?
Yeah.
Immediately. It's pretty telling.
Yeah, there's definitely an interesting dynamic there.
Yeah, so in terms of the look and feel of Gotham in this one, I still enjoy the aesthetic and the lighting and the cinematography are amazing. Snowy
and Christmas.
Yeah, the snowy, like having a season there, I think is really cool. There's an animated series, it's 2 movies. It's like part 1 and part 2, The Long Halloween, and it goes through like a year basically, and so you see all the seasons in Gotham, and that
cool.
That's aspect's really cool. But here, the only thing that Gotham felt kind of smaller to me than the first one, and like a little bit less lived in. Like, I think something about having a reporter and the reporters and whatever and the party, like it felt a little bit more like, I felt like I had a little better idea of like what goes on in Gotham like most of the time, whereas here it felt like it really was mostly focused on this small number of characters. I think part of that might be that the original was filmed in England, and then they filmed this in the US, so they didn't necessarily use, I think they stored all the sets for a long time or something, but like
it looks
they must have
studio
moved them,
and like it looks very not CGI, but whatever they would do. I mean,
studio,
it's technically
it's
Rockefeller. You have your statues.
It's just like Rockefeller, but it looks like sets as opposed to like location shots. So I just feel like Gotham here doesn't breathe quite as much, and maybe
wait till we get to the Joel Schumacher ones. Jesus Christ!
Yeah. It's like this condensing box from movie to movie. But
part of it, I think, is you kind of brought this up. It feels very surreal,
Right.
and like I'm sure there's better movie making terms for this, but like to me, this is a huge range. But I'm going to kind of put it into 2 binaries. I feel like there's some movies are. Here are things that are happening that you might see with your own eyes, and we're just pointing a camera at it so you can see the people doing the things. And then there's other movies where it's like, we're going to make the lighting and the sets and the camera angles tell the story as much. And so, like, we're not saying that this looks like a real life thing you would see. It is meant to be surreal. It's meant to be artistic license and things like that. And I feel like that to me is exactly what Gotham was, in this. And I liked a lot of that, but I did feel like it was a little like having someone tell Burton to maybe be 80% instead of 100% Tim Burton is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
This definitely felt like that thing of like, all right, the editors are no longer worried about you. You get to do your own thing. And maybe those editors had an idea.
And to me, it's not like having 20% less Burton. It's having 20% of other stuff that then the very Burton-y Burton stuff contrasts with. So you get like a little more contrast. So, I feel like there are a lot fewer daylight scenes here. And one of the things I like about daytime scenes in an otherwise dark movie is then the darkness is darker yet for the light that you
but
just
that's every time they show Selena Kyle in the day after she becomes Catwoman, they just put more and more black makeup under her eye.
Yeah, so true. I will say one thing I really liked in terms of the Batman story is, it's fairly common, especially in this era, for like every movie, the male lead has a different love interest. And normally it's like, James Bond movies, I think, are the king of this. But a lot of them, like, you just completely forget that the last love interest ever existed.
Right.
I kind of liked that not only does he mention Ricky Vale, but kind of continuing what we were talking about before in the last one, Paul, about him being kind of awkward. He does that thing you're never supposed to do on an early date of, like, bringing up his ex, talking about his ex.
Right.
Like, she did ask. No, he did bring it up, right?
Yeah, but, like... Yeah, but even if she asks, like, you don't have to go into it too much.
Yeah.
You don't have to be like, yeah, she kind of left me a broken man, and I don't really know what I'm doing anymore. But
and then this whole thing about, like, well, it was the two truths, and she couldn't like, I was like, dude, don't do that. Of course this version of Bruce would do that, And I just for the movie to acknowledge that so much, I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. You don't see that very often.
She liked it.
Right, exactly. Like, he's still so awkward. Right, like around women in terms of like trying, like that he's interested in, and then he's also so bad at lying.
They
like,
both are.
It's a business trip. Yeah. No, I mean she wasn't any better.
Yeah,
but in the first one, he was
it.
like, I've got to go on a business trip. Yeah, business trip, and it's like that's the only thing he can think of. Even though apparently he never goes on business trips, he does all his business in Gotham. But like, yeah, I enjoyed that awkwardness, and I think what she liked about him was that he actually was awkward and like honest, and that's a lot of the advice that people give. Oh, don't do this, don't do that. It's like, I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily particularly good advice, especially if you're trying to look for someone that you want to like forge a long-term connection with. Like,
he's like, you're kind of dark. Do you want to have dinner?
Right, exactly.
I mean,
like they both like that about each other.
He's miles away from being smooth. And I think she like Max is smooth.
Right.
She's seen that fakery and she likes that, I think, a lot about him.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's just like Christian Bale Batman would never in a million years do this,
Right.
Like,
no, yeah.
That also
or even
Alfred
animated series Batman, I think.
Yeah. In both of those also I think Alfred would never would know to cover for him as well.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
oh yeah, business trip, of course, like
this Alfred's like, oh, let me show you the Batcave.
Yeah.
I didn't let Vicky Vale down into the Batcave.
All right,
I love that Alfred so much, though. I like the Burton Alfred is just like, he's my favorite. He's so adorable.
Yeah.
He might be the least helpful, but he definitely looks like Alfred.
Though I also thought it was interesting that they let him be so very wrong. Like, because you were saying, and maybe this was me as well, but he gets pulled in by Penguin at first. Like, he's telling Michael Keaton,
Alfred, yeah.
Yeah, he's telling Bruce Wayne, like, no, just let people be happy,
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
For sure.
All right, well, so let's kind of, the wrap-up question I tend to ask now is is this your Batman? And since there's not much of Batman, I'm going to ask just for, is this your Batman? Is this your Penguin? Is this your Catwoman? Is this your Gotham?
Okay. You want me to go first?
Yeah, why don't you go first?
It is my Catwoman. It is my Penguin, but I don't watch all the animated stuff, so don't judge me. And we'll see what's his face does, Colin Firth. It's not my Batman. And I have to say I do like the Gotham, but that's just because I like magical, whatever you were saying.
Realism.
Magical realism.
Yeah. The Batman and like the Nolan Batmans, the Gotham's cool, but it's every city put together.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this Gotham visually is very much my Gotham, although I feel like it's very similar to the first one, and I liked the first one a little better in that regard. But this one, it's beautiful, and it's beautiful in this like broken down, dark old city kind of way that like I grew up in Hell's Kitchen, like
I would love to live there.
Exactly. Catwoman, I really enjoy this Catwoman. She's not the Catwoman that's like my first choice of like what to see in a Catwoman if she's going to be in more than one thing. Also, they were going to do a spin-off with her as Catwoman, and then that ended up going through a bunch of rewrites and a bunch of different potential actresses, and ended up being the Halle Berry film. So,
oh no! Well,
but that wasn't at all what they were going to do with this Catwoman. And I think having this Catwoman have a spin-off, I think could have been really cool. That would have been maybe something really interesting to see. This Penguin, again, kind of like Catwoman, I feel like is a great performance of this version of the character. Not really the character I would want to see through a long series of films or TV shows. I kind of feel like all of the villains here are these super over-the-top, kind of similarly, quite insane, kind of, like, as opposed to having these, like, really different kind of motives for one another.
Totally why I like it. It's just pure chaos, both of them.
And it's like, it works in the film.
Yeah.
But
it's
like,
not everyone's cup of tea.
Right. And that's one of the nice things about having films that are kind of standalones. Like this, you were mentioning, it does, it does reference Vicky Vale. I hadn't even remembered that, but I was glad to see that it didn't have this like amnesia like a lot of sequels back then usually did, right? Particularly about, female characters. They're like, oh, we're on to the next one, But like I like that there isn't too much continuity in that. It is like, it's its own movie. And if you love it, you can watch it every Christmas, right? If you don't, you don't have to. And you're not going to be like, oh, but then I'll miss what happened in the next one. I won't get the reference. It's like, it's fine,
Fine.
And in terms of Batman, like, I think this is we didn't even really talk that much about Batman, partially because he wasn't the main character really in the movie.
Right.
But I feel like Michael Keaton's Batman in the Tim Burton movies, I feel like these villains would not have worked if you had like Christian Bale's Batman.
100%.
I feel like he did what any good, straight man does in a comedy, which is like sort of, set things up and give them room to chew all the furniture and kind of be a little bit like, are you done? Okay, now we're going to do this. And, and so like in terms of feel and look, like very much my Batman. In terms of tossing people into pits with explosives and letting them blow up, not so much.
Yeah, I think it's where I was thinking like in a lot of ways this is even less my Batman than the last one, but also here he's the detective. This is, I think, I think of all of the Batman movies, this is the one where he's the most of a detective. And I do really love that. Yeah. And part of it's also because in this one, there's nothing whatsoever about him striking fear into the hearts of, people. And like, the Christian Bale, Christopher Nolan, that's much more on the, like, the fear, theatricality side of things. So, yeah, so I guess for me, like, I think this is one of my Catwomen. I think this is like, there's a couple of different perspectives. I think, honestly, I think my two favorites right now are Eartha Kitt and then the one from the Harley Quinn. But this one, I think, is another very good portrayal. I think Michelle Pfeiffer is a fantastic portrayal. And I think this is... There's a part of me that like doesn't love the idea that the love interest is always the one who's going to have more of a sympathetic aspect to their villainy.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of why I push back on it a little bit. But I do think, like, avenging woman who's been mistreated by her bosses and the men in her life, like, that's a real story that deserves to get told. And there's some righteousness anger to that character. I think as much as I love Danny DeVito, this is that his role is probably the one that strikes me as the most off, because I think the Penguins that I most love, especially from the animated series, but also from Gotham and some other things, like this Penguin, the whole point is like they're trying to make him dignified, but they're trying to put a monster into a tuxedo.
Right.
Like other penguins, he is in a tuxedo. Like, the point is that he is a high cultured, classical, like, he knows what fork to. Danny
He's
DeVito
a Max
doesn't know what.
Schreck who looks like Penguin.
Yeah, like Danny DeVito doesn't know what fork to use, and to me, Penguin should know what fork to use at a fancy dinner.
Yeah.
You know,
I think you called it earlier though. With it was about like society being so easily like, oh, you can take this person who's not a bad guy who looks like a monster, you know, theoretically or whatever, trying to tiptoe, and you know, and everyone's like, yeah, you guys said so. All the celebrities said so. He's a great guy, and then just like that, it turns. So it's like almost like the people of Gotham are almost a villain in this too.
Yeah.
So there is a sort of a Philadelphia reference because they have that one statue in the Rockefeller Center of Gotham of the guy, the boxer holding up his fists in 100% the Rocky statue.
Yeah. And that statue was not probably up by the time when that movie came out.
Well, so if we go with that further, though, if part of the idea is can you put Penguin in a suit and have everyone believe it? Now I want the two old guys from Trading Places to be like kind of watching it, you know,
Mortimer and what's his name?
I can't remember the other.
From the Trading Places and Coming to America verse.
Yes, that's true. That's true. And to my mind, I think of them as Stalder. To me, they're kind of the live action two Muppets. From
Absolutely. That's so funny.
All right. We're now way off kilter. So any last comments from either of you about this movie?
I still listen to and love the Sooksy and the Banshee song that they specifically did for the Masquerade Ball. I feel like the Tim Burton Batman movies have the best musical soundtracks and like scores of so many Batman movies. I love the Hans Zimmer ones. Let me like correct myself, but I like you get Prince to do every song in your first one, and then you have like Sooksy and the Banshee and then Danny Elfman like just killing it with this one. I really appreciate the scores.
Yeah, and I kind of like that because Paul, you pointed out that in the first movie it felt like Danny Elfman is writing the music for Batman, and Prince is writing the music for the Joker.
Right. Yeah.
And so here, I kind of like again,
love that. Oh wow!
Right, and here it sounds like now it's Danny Elfman is again writing the music for Gotham and Batman, and Susie and the Banshees are writing the music for Catwoman.
Yeah.
So
I like
that kind of works.
There's the Selena transformation with the violins, like it must have been. It's such a hard violin noise and just plucks, but it works so well. But like I remember trying to do it on my violin, and it's just like wee. Like, oh God, no, you can't play that note, but somehow they do it and it make it sound so magically creepy and beautiful.
Yeah.
I just love it.
That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you both so much. Really glad we can make this work. Ashley, what are you up to these days? Are you podcasting anywhere else these days?
Sometimes. So you can find me on the MCU cast, the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast. We have a very special episode of Superhero Ethics coming out about Jaws. Which will be fun. Boba Fett weekly, not this week for me, but next week I will be back on, and Peacemaker on PandaVision. That's it. Yeah. So much.
I think the Jaws episode will come out before this one comes out, but yeah, definitely check out the Jaws episode. That's a lot of fun. And I will say, if you enjoyed the Jaws episode, that was 100% Ashley. Ashley came to me and said, here are these two guests I have. Here's this idea I have. So definitely give Ashley all the credit because I think it's one of the best episodes we've done in quite a while.
Oh, thank you.
Zen Madman, we cannot email you, zenmadman@gmail, as apparently whoever has the Zen Madman at Gmail account has been being invited to these podcasts for the last couple months and has been getting all of our outlines. But thank God I'm not profit sharing with you yet. But yeah, so tell us more about what the Zen Madman is up to these days.
The Zen Madman is installing acoustic foam and got a lovely new mic that sounds even better, and doing a lot of things to try and get ready to start doing a lot of things. So hopefully I'll be on Twitch again soon, Zen Madman on Twitch and on Twitter, not on Gmail. And that's pretty much what I'm doing.
Awesome.
I'm taking my car to the shop again.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. For those who know me, you obviously can find my podcasts about this, about Star Wars, about other stuff, all at theethicalpanda.com. or you can also search for the Ethical Panda on Twitter, Facebook, etc. Definitely check the other stuff out, but most importantly, that's the best way we can get feedback. We love getting feedback. We'd love to hear more from you all about how do you feel about Batman Returns? How does this fit into your personal pantheon of who is your Batman? What do you think of this portrayal of Catwoman, of Penguin? Especially because I think all three of us watched this movie when we were young. I would really love to hear from people who grew up later, who like maybe the Batman from the animated series was your first Penguin and now went back and watched this one. Or like you grew up with the Catwoman from that series, or the Catwoman from Anne Hathaway's Catwoman from Dark Knight Rises. Would love to hear from you. What do you think of these portrayals? Write into us. You can find all the ways on theethicalpanda.com. So I'm having myself, Paul, Ashley. Thank you all for listening in, and have a great day.
Bum, 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 bum.
Dun,
Dun, dun, dun.
I'm Batman.
Oh, no.
Mistletoe to be deadly if you eat it.
Even deadlier.
A kiss could be even
kiss-
deadlier.
Yeah.
If you mean it. I could. A plan is forming.